is why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution.
What the fuck does the Constitution have to do with any of this?
And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides.
He does a lot better when Trump isn't interrupting. Perhaps that's why Trump is interrupting so often.
No president has ever said anything like that.
We've had plenty of racist presidents.
When Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is a savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African-American community.
I really expected he'd go the completionist route by mentioning brown people and Asians, but I'm glad he didn't.
He did a crime bill, 1994, where you call them super predators, African Americans, a super predator.
No, Hillary Clinton said that.
And they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you a super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country.
Yeah, but it's not like you didn't continue the drug war started by the crime bill.
You did the 1990, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that. Because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump.
The Portland sheriff said, I have not supported Trump and I never will.
I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour.
Not only is that an impediment to our free speech, you coming in and invading would have made things worse. In fact, it did. They're protesting too many police, and your solution is to send in more law enforcement?
But they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. Radical left. Law and order.
Why does he keep saying that? He seems to think that it's intrinsically a good thing when in fact the Nazis were also very law and order.
And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there is. There's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right.
What is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of a town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place,
that
and you
is
say
not
peaceful protest?
President
No,
Trump,
it's
I'm not
not,
asking.
but you say it is.
93% of all the protests are peaceful. You gotta hit them with that fact.
This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else. And he would know.
What is radical about racial sensitivity training, sir?
If you were a certain person,
He's talking about
you had
white people.
no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and, frankly, very sick ideas.
Are you ever going to actually say anything?
And really, they were teaching people to hate our country.
Haha, I fucking wish.
And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country.
Aha, patriotic education, like what the Nazis
They
did.
were teaching people that our country is a horrible place.
'Cause it fucking is.
It's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's the racist.
You just don't know.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about
You
this
don't
than he
know.
does.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. We're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do.
The Democrats that run these
Absolutely
cities
ridiculous.
don't want to talk like you about law and order.
Violent
and you
crime,
still haven't mentioned.
violent
Are you in
crime.
favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow it.
Are you in
and a little
favor
bit
of law and order? Go
yes,
ahead,
I'm
say
in
it.
favor.
You asked
Everybody's
a
in favor
question,
of
let him finish.
Law and
He
order.
loses
Law
left.
and order.
Let him answer.
Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly.
You have to mention how he's not actually for law and order. Trump is an agent of chaos. He just uses the law and order baton to beat people into submission, Judge Dredd style.
And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration.
All right.
It's gone up on his watch.
Places we had trouble were Democratic-run cities.
That's
and
exactly my question.
Democratic-
There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, and he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters, and once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone, and you would see problems like you've
He
never
wouldn't
seen.
know a
before.
suburb unless he took a wrong turn. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles on racism don't work anymore.
You sure about
Suburbs
that?
are by and large integrated.
What?
What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
What does reimagining policing mean? And do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police offices. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance.
Nice.
They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down.
Yeah, so less police. We defund the police, right?
We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down.
He has no law enforcement
That's not
support,
true.
almost
That's
nothing.
Look,
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead. Think. We have time. Name one law enforcement group.
Biden actually does have the support of over 175 law enforcement officials, including the Madison, Wisconsin's police chief.
Have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now.
What a cop-out.
I made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted, and anyone who commits it
But
should
you've
be
never
prosecuted.
called for the people, the leader. Excuse me, sir. You have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he'd just stay out of the way.
Wrong move.
You know, his own former spokesperson said, you know, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
She said that.
Fact check, she actually did say that.
That's what he is, keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly, and every single solitary time.
And to
I have to mention how sending troops and secret police to invade his own country is part of that problem of gasoline on the fire, while he gets to use it as posturing for law and order.
I'd send in the National Guard, it would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay,
But they don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
There is no comparison between Antifa and actual neo-fascists. Those people are actually bringing guns, looking for trouble, and trying to shoot people up. Antifa, most of them are unarmed, and they mostly stick to themselves.
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared to
do
specifically
that, but
do it?
Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
Who would
right
you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. Stand back and stand by. Stand
Does this
back
sound
and
like a
stand
condemnation
by,
to you?
stand back and
Yeah,
stand
me neither.
by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem.
His
This
own
is a left-wing.
FBI director
This
said
is a
the threat
left-wing
of
problem.
white
Go ahead, sir.
supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you gotta be
not
kidding.
militia. That's what
Oh, really?
his
It's an idea.
FBI director
Gentlemen?
said. Everybody in
Antifa
your
is
administration.
You heard it here, folks. Antifa is bad. Overall, I think both sides were trying their best to lose this segment for themselves. Trump basically confirming he's a neo-Nazi and Biden continuing to use the id Paul card. But Biden didn't fuck himself over as much, and he started off pretty strong, so I'm going to give the slight edge to him.